From the headquarters of Telstar English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Camila Escalante. China has ended its lockdown of Wuhan, the city where the coronavirus first emerged. After 11 weeks, authorities will allow the city's 11 million residents to once again travel in and out of Wuhan. However, residents will be required to keep using a smartphone application that monitors their health status and shows that they have not been in recent contact with anyone confirmed to have the virus. Across Wuhan, nearly 94% of businesses have reopened, but schools remain closed for now. Ecuador's top court has convicted former President Rafael Correa on corruption charges and sentenced him to 8 years in prison. Correa was among 20 people, including his vice president Jorge Glass, accused of accepting $8 million in bribes in exchange for public contracts between the years 2012 and 2016. The court also banned Correa from politics for the next 25 years. The former president left Ecuador 3 years ago, and if he were to return, he could be arrested due to his conviction, which can still be appealed. Our correspondent Denise Herrera from Quito has the details.
Ecuadorian former President Rafael Correa and Vice President Jorge Glass have been declared guilty of bribery. The Ecuadorian court sentenced them for 8 years in prison. The sentence also said that they can do any political participation for 25 years. This decision came in the middle of a sanitary crisis where supporters of former President Rafael Correa are saying that the government is trying to take away the attention of what is really happening in Ecuador, where citizens from Guayaquil are still denouncing that they didn't receive any help from the authorities. They are still denouncing in videos published in social media that their relatives are dying in the streets, are dying in their homes. Meanwhile, former President Rafael Correa said in his Twitter account that this is a political persecution, and we should remember that at the beginning of this legal process, the legal defense team of former President Rafael Correa, the lawyer Fausto Jarrín, denounced that the government is trying to remove the participation of the citizen revolution movement in the coming elections.
Barbados has recorded its third death with a total of 63 confirmed novel coronavirus cases as of this Tuesday.
It is with great regret at this point that I announce the death of the third patient with COVID disease. This is a 95-year-old male who presented us quite late and had been extremely unwell up to this point. He died at the wee hours this morning at 3 a.m. And to give you a further update on our numbers, as of now in isolation, we have 53 patients at our isolation centers across the country. We expect 3 further admissions today from our cases identified last night.
Cuba is working with the government of Trinidad and Tobago to send a team of medical professionals to assist the Twin Island Republic in its fight against COVID-19. The government has assured that the unspecified number of healthcare workers will be deployed to assist both islands.
The Cuban government is making the necessary arrangements to have a Cuban plane bring these nurses here, and those arrangements are currently being put in place, and I hope that we will be able to complete it and get these Cuban nurses here, medical personnel here within the next couple of days. They will be quarantined for the 14-day period, and once at the end of that 14-day period they're healthy and have not shown any signs or been positive for COVID-19, they will then be allowed to enter our healthcare system.
Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has seemingly backtracked on his words on firing Health Minister Luiz Henrique Mandetta as the country registers over 12,200 COVID-19 cases. Our correspondent Brian Meir from Sao Paulo has the details.
Over the last 24-hour period recorded, the number of coronavirus cases that have been confirmed by the Brazilian government rose to 12,200. This represents around an 8% increase over the previous day, which appears to be a slowdown in the rate that transmission is increasing. However, Health Minister Luiz Mandetta said that the public should not pay that much attention to these numbers because the real numbers are much higher because they're having logistical bottlenecks and problems with their testing. Now, his statement is supported by what a lot of public health officials are saying. Dr. Margaret Malcomo from Fiocruz Institute said last week in an interview that she believes the real numbers are probably 10 times higher based on the number of hospital internations for pneumonia that are happening right now nationwide. There was some drama in Brasilia yesterday as far-right President Jair Bolsonaro announced on Twitter he was going to get rid of his health minister, Luis Mandetta, who's polling twice as high as the president in the polls. Over the course of the afternoon, all of the big Brazilian newspapers started saying that Mandetta's downfall was imminent, that there was going to be a press conference at 5 and Bolsonaro was going to announce Mandetta's resignation. 5 o'clock came and went. When the press conference started, Mandetta walked into the room, calm as could be, and announced that he wasn't going anywhere, he's staying on. And so afterwards, some of the Brazilian newspapers and news outlets like UOL are speculating that the military have isolated Bolsonaro and that they're now running the coronavirus response.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute. Welcome back. In Bolivia, the campesino unions of the Chapare region, which form the most solid support base of the movement towards socialism, are delivering a donation of 16 truckloads of produce to the city of Cochabamba. That donation will go to the people in need amid the crisis and will include bananas, oranges, tangerines, pineapple, yuca, and other produce from the Tropico. Six Federations leader Andronico Rodriguez said that since the start of the quarantine, families have been without the means to make a living in the absence of their day-to-day work. The 16 tons of Chapare produced food will be distributed free of charge to areas including the Zona Sud and other localities which have requested assistance.
At this moment, we are already here with 16 trucks. Approximately, we have 16 tons of products between bananas, orange, tangerines, and other products of the Tropico of Cochabamba. In just a few moments, following this press conference of the six federations of the Tropico, we are going to be able to coordinate with the governor and other authorities of this sector in order to distribute to different places, such as the Zona Sud and some others. We also have a request from the penitentiary centers. We hope to make it to there, and we will have a coordination with the government, among the executives and mayors, to be able to make these distributions in a few minutes.
The vice president of the six federations, Andronico Rodriguez, led the delivery of the food to the working class families of the city of Cochabamba. The campesinos of the Chapare are the very people who've been labeled as terrorists and savages by the de facto administration and the country's right wing.
During this period of being locked up in our houses, without working, without going out, the economy of many poor families in the same region of the Tropic of Cochabamba has been greatly affected. For this reason, in coordination with our municipal authorities, with our leaders at the tropical level of Cochabamba, we have seen the relevance of entering the solidarity campaign in Cochabamba with our products, which we produce. There are more than 16 trucks right now, and we are evaluating more than 150 tons of fruit. We hope to coordinate with our brother leaders of the periphery of the city and some provinces and municipalities nearby, in coordination with our governor, and we will be looking to make the delivery in a responsible way so that people do not crowd in any place where the fruit is to be distributed.
We spoke with Bolivian writer and reporter with Radio Casashuan Coca, Ali Vargas, who's in the Tropico of Cochabamba himself. He said that without support from the Janine Áñez coup regime, Bolivian workers who've lost their income due to the quarantine are experiencing a difficult time. And at times, this has led to protests demanding food.
So people are incredibly upset about this, are incredibly angry, and in some places, people have even broken the quarantine to go out and protest. One such protest took place in the Zona Sur of Cochabamba, which is the working class area of that city, the most densely populated area of Cochabamba. And people came out in very large numbers, banging pots and pans, you know, the traditional Latin American cacerolazo, to protest against having empty kitchens. Also in the town of Riberalta in the department of Beni, people came out. That was mostly transport workers and motor taxi drivers who came out that time. And again, I think the fact that it took place in the department of Beni, which is the current coup president Agnes's home department, not an area where the MAS has traditionally won many votes, that shows that the current anger is so widespread and goes beyond all kind of political affiliations. And now the government are trying to say that the people who are marching are people who are paid by the MAS, paid by the former president Evo Morales. It's an absurdity. And if they really believe this, then they're in big trouble, because they don't understand the depth of popular feeling, the depth to which people are incredibly angry about being left without an income and without any support from the government. As I said before, the large majority of people will not be receiving any kind of social security benefits during this incredibly difficult time where they can't go out to work. So the anger is widespread. But this is also going beyond protests as well. A lot of unions are organising sort of solidarity sort of kitchens for those in need. The young people from the MAS in the town of San Julián in the department of Santa Cruz are organising what they call ollas comunes, which is sort of collective kitchens where they'll be providing meals, hot meals, to those most in need. And a very exciting initiative, which should be starting just today, is the campesino unions in the Chapare region, the 6 federations, traditionally the most solid base of support for the MAS. They're actually travelling today, right now, to the city of Cochabamba, where they'll be distributing free food produced in this area, and they'll be distributing it to working class families in the city who have been left with nothing by the coup government. They'll be taking fruits such as citric fruit, pineapple, mandarins, carambola, all fruits that are in season at the moment. They'll be taking some fruits that are only available in this region, such as copo azul, a very nice fruit that you can't get in many other areas. They'll be taking yuca, they'll be taking rice, they'll be taking, if I'm not mistaken, a form of potatoes called balusa, which is native to the tropical regions. So this is an incredible act of solidarity. They're taking a very large number of trucks. This isn't a one-off act, for photos. They're taking around 30 trucks to the city of Cochabamba, and they're going to be rolling this out in other areas of the country. They're going to be going to Santa Cruz. I should say that I'm one of the admins for the Radio Causation Coca Facebook page. We've had people from all across the country writing into the Facebook page asking, please, can the comrades from the Tropic of Cochabamba, from the Chapare region, come to my area too? I live in Santa Cruz and we've been left with nothing. I live in North Potosí, we've been left with nothing. I live in El Alto, we've been left with nothing. And so now the 6 federations, the Chapare Campesino unions, are going to be rolling out a plan where they go to a large number of areas. As I said, they've got planned at the moment to go to San Julián in Santa Cruz, to Plan 3000 in Santa Cruz, which is a working class neighbourhood in the city. They've got plans to go to North Potosí. And this isn't going to be purely donations now. What they're going to be instituting is a network of exchange. So different indigenous communities are going to be trading products without using money, but through barter. And so, for example, indigenous Andean communities will be providing potato, onions, carrots, things that are traditionally grown there and not grown in the Chapare region. They'll be exchanging that for fruits, for fish, and other products that are local to here. So what you've got in response to the inaction by the government is a sort of network of solidarity between, within the indigenous social movements, to create a sort of popular economy, an alternative economy, independent of the state and independent of sort of capitalist speculation. So, there's already been evident in the city where there's been huge inflation on basic goods. So, out of this crisis is something new has been created, and as I said, an alternative economy run by the campesino indigenous unions. I think that's incredibly exciting, because the people have to help each other because the government isn't doing anything.
Indigenous people in Colombia are already facing forcible displacement from their homes due to the extensive internal violence, but now they have to take the necessary measures to stop the spread of the coronavirus without any help from the government.
People from the Embera community who arrived to Bogota after being forcibly displaced from their lands say they are now being removed from the places that housed them due to a lack of resources during the mandatory quarantine.
I've been here for about 3 months paying rent, but now they demand we pay every day. But we cannot work at this time, so they kicked us out this morning.
Many of the families live day by day, and they survive by making and selling handcrafts. But with the situation, we must all stay home, which hasn't been easy for them. And the state hasn't guaranteed anything for the people. The people like these people who live day by day and who could use any aid.
This situation paints a worrying picture for indigenous people in Colombia. As they face multiple threats in their lands, they must live under constant violence and now fight an invisible enemy, the novel coronavirus.
For the nomad people of Orinoquia, there is no attention. The nomad and sedentary people of the Pacific are confined in urban areas because rural areas have been vetoed. We can't hunt or fish, so where can we get the food that we need to live?
In the face of the state's disinterest, the indigenous communities have been implementing preventive measures of their own to slow down the arrival of the pandemic. But they say armed groups and even public security forces are preventing their work.
We asked them to stop blocking our measures. We're trying to face the situation with absolutely no help from the state.
Until now, indigenous communities have only reported 2 confirmed cases of COVID-19, both within the Yucpa community.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. To the United States now, as the state of Wisconsin has held its presidential primary despite a statewide stay-at-home order and concern over mass infection amid the coronavirus crisis. Governor Tony Evers tried to stop in-person voting with an order on Monday, but the state Supreme Court ruled that it must go on. Thousands of poll workers said that they would not work, resulting in the National Guard troops being called in to fill the gaps. In the city of Milwaukee, only 5 polling stations were open instead of the usual 180.
It just doesn't feel like it was the safest decision to do. I saw a lot of elderly voters, people who are high risk, out there today, and everyone was taking as many precautions as they could. We were 6 feet apart, but we don't know what we don't know about this virus at this point in time, and it's really scary.
Spain remains one of the most affected nations by the novel coronavirus, but figures show that there's been a decrease in the new infections and in the numbers of deaths.
Like many other hospitals across Spain, work here is intense, and many spaces are being rearranged to aid in the fight against COVID-19.
We have transformed some special units to help patients who need more dedicated care than what we are used to offer.
Spaces have also been repurposed to expand the intensive care unit.
Hospitalization units are being repurposed, and we have created new intensive care units for patients who need to be intubated and depend on a ventilator.
For mild cases, this hospital has also taken over a hotel with a capacity for 500 people. Across the nation, a number of public and private spaces are being used to treat patients. One of those most affected have been health workers, as many are testing positive for the coronavirus. On top of this, there are shortages of supplies in many hospitals.
Individual protective equipment is running out quickly. There are problems with the resupply. We are overusing equipment and sometimes even sharing it.
Another issue is providing psychiatric help to patients and their families. But the government of Catalonia has started to work on a system to connect people who have been affected by the disease.
Patients are going through a very difficult situation because they cannot receive any visits and don't know what could happen to them. Their families are suffering from the same uncertainty and that feeling of helplessness. There's a lot of anxiety among them.
It is key to figure out a way for patients and their families to communicate, no matter where they are. This matters most if the patient is not going to make it.
In Catalonia, there are 27,000 infected patients and over 3,000 deaths, but these numbers climb up to 135,000 and 13,000 respectively across Spain.
France's COVID-19 death toll has surged past 10,000, as reported by the Director General of Health.
Since March 1st, if we add up the deaths that occurred in hospitals and those that occurred in medical social institutions, in particular the EPAD nursing homes, we have registered 10,328 deaths.
Italy has announced a $435 billion package of additional economic aid for small, medium, and large companies to help mitigate the economic impact of the coronavirus crisis. The aid will be administered as loans through banks.
I announced that with the decree we just approved, we are giving immediate liquidity worth 400 billion euros to our companies, small, medium, and large, 200 billion to fund the internal market, and another 200 billion to strengthen the export market. This is a massive firepower. I really don't recall such as a powerful intervention in the history of our republic to fund and support businesses.
Germany has unveiled an app designed for smartwatches and fitness bracelets that would allow for the voluntary collection of data which could reveal signs of COVID-19 infection. However, scientists have warned that the app is only a complementary equipment and does not replace a test.
Today I would like to introduce another app, a new one that has been developed in the last weeks, the Corona Data Donation app. With this app, you can voluntarily provide the Robert Koch Institute with certain data, and thus helps to better estimate where and how fast COVID-19 is spreading in Germany. What you need is a smartwatch or a fitness bracelet and the Corona Data Donation app, which is available for free download starting today.
Healthcare workers in Athens, Greece, protested over the lack of staff and equipment amid the coronavirus crisis. The workers' union criticized the government for only sending about 3,000 new hires when they said that there was a need for 30,000 across Greek hospitals. Greece imposed lockdown measures relatively early on in the COVID-19 pandemic compared to some other European countries, but officials warn that the month of April will be critical in the fight against the virus. As of Tuesday, Greece records over 1,700 cases and 81 deaths.
We are pursuing the immediate hiring of permanent staff. Thousands. We are short 30,000, and they say they'll bring 3,000. All intensive care beds must be made available by forcibly mobilizing the private sector. All necessary protection measures for healthcare workers must be taken. Not a single colleague should be fired, and 3 months of arrears should be paid to those who are owed it. In the time of crisis, primary healthcare cannot be subpar.
We've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telestarenglish.net. And we're on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telestar English, I'm Camila Escalante. Thank you for watching.